Now, not long ago, as you may know, we had a holiday called St. Patrick's Day. And on St. Patrick's Day, maybe you remember, everybody's supposed to have a little bit of green on them. Anyway, about 2 years ago, there was a boy on a farm uh, not far from a town, and his name was Stephen, and he was 6 years old. Now, one day his mother said, "It's St. Patrick's Day. We've got to go to town. Have you got something green on?" And he didn't. So she found a green shirt and he put it on. And they lived in a place where it wasn't winter at that time, it was pretty warm. It was like spring. And they went into town, and his mom said, "You know what we have to do? We have to get some ice cream, and you'll be surprised." And they went into an ice cream shop and they got some green ice cream. And Stephen got an ice cream cone and he tasted the green ice cream and it was really good. So they drove back home and they were on the farm, and Stephen went out in the back of the house and he's eating his ice cream cone, and he looks over at a tree and he sees something green just sticking out of a hole at the bottom of the tree. So he goes over and looks at it and reaches down and pulls on it. He doesn't know what else to do. And out of the hole, he pulls a little man who turns around and looks up at him. And the little man has a green hat, a green coat with gold buckles, green pants, and funny looking black shoes with gold buttons on them. And did I say he has a long gray beard? And Stephen's a little bit scared, but he looks down and he says, "Who are you?" And the little man says, "I am a leprechaun, and I came from Ireland. And what are you eating?" And Stephen holds his ice cream cone out and he says, "It's green ice cream because this is St. Patrick's Day." And the leprechaun said, "Of course, I know it's St. Patrick's Day." He said, "Ice cream?" He said, "I've never had ice cream." And Stephen says, "Well, everyone has ice cream. How old are you? You must have had ice cream." And the leprechaun says, "I am 1,000 years old, and I have never had ice cream." Stephen says, "Would you like to take a bite?" And the leprechaun says, "Well, okay." So Stephen holds his ice cream cone down, and the leprechaun takes a little bite of green ice cream. And he says, "That is delicious. I want more of that. Where do you get it?" And Stephen said, "We get it in town." And the leprechaun said, "Let's go." And all of a sudden, the leprechaun, who was about this big, appeared on Stephen's shoulder. And they flew up in the air. And they flew into town. And Stephen says, "How do you do that?" And the leprechaun says, "Well, all leprechauns know how to fly." And they went to the ice cream shop and they got a little cup of green ice cream and a spoon for the leprechaun. And the leprechaun said, "That is really good." And so they flew back to the house and they were out in the backyard. And the leprechaun says they're both sitting together on a log. And the leprechaun says, I wonder if you might be able to help me. And Stephen says, how could I help you? And the leprechaun says, well, I take care of lots of things in the forest and around and about. And you have a beehive. And Stephen says, yes, we have a beehive and it gives lots of good honey. And the leprechaun said, well, there's a serious problem. The queen bee inside the beehive died over the winter. And all the bees are going to fly away if you don't get another queen bee. And Stephen says, well, how can I help? And the leprechaun says, well, you have a long arm. If you're willing to help, let's go get another queen bee. And Stephen says, cool, all right. And he noticed while they were talking that his ice cream cone never got smaller and smaller. It was the same amount of ice cream cone, and he looked over in the leprechaun's ice cream cup, and the ice cream in the ice cream cup never got any smaller. Well, they both kept eating ice cream because it was really good. So the leprechaun hopped up on Stephen's shoulder and they flew away into the forest. And they flew along for a while, and then they saw two huge bunches of bees hanging from a branch, one bunch of bees on one branch and one bunch of bees on another branch close by. And Stephen goes, whoa, there must be an awful lot of bees on those two clusters of bees. And the little man said, yes, there's 5,000 bees on each one. And in the middle of each one is a queen bee. Now, if we get the queen bee from one cluster, of bees, it will go over and join, and they will have their queen bee, and we can take the one queen bee back to the hive. And Stephen says, how are we going to do that? The little man says, well, watch. And they flew up in the air right next to one of the big bunches of bees. And the little man said, okay, reach your hand in there. And Stephen goes, they'll sting me, I'm scared. And the leprechaun said, no, don't worry, just reach your hand in. And as Stephen reached his hand toward the bees, they all kind of separated and made a tunnel. And he reached his hand way, way, way into the bunch of bees. And the queen bee crawled onto his hand. Nobody stung him. And he pulled his hand out. And the leprechaun said, see, your arm is a lot longer than mine. I couldn't reach my arm into the middle of that bunch of bees. So let's go home. So they flew away. And as they flew away, all the bees from where the queen came went over to the other group of bees to join them and their queen. And they got back to the farm. And they landed on the ground and walked over to the beehive, and Stephen held out his hand, and the queen bee climbed into the beehive, and all the bees in the beehive were very, very excited to have a new queen. Well, the leprechaun said, oh, that's great. Thank you for helping me. And they went back to sit on their log. And Stephen noticed in a few minutes that now all the green ice cream cone was gone. And the little leprechaun said, well, thanks very much. It was nice to meet you. And he walked away across the ground and went into the hole in the bottom of the tree. And that is the end of the story. Did you like it? Do you think you could use your crayons or words to describe your favorite part? That would be a lot of fun, don't you think? And we'll see you the next time.